Welcome to the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, a conversation built to help you address the mess, connect the dots, and defeat addiction. Doing your work matters because if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Life is tough and we're here to help. I'm your host, Ben Derrick, and as always, I'll be joined by Roan Hunter. Let's jump right in. Roan, back again being podcasters.
Yeah, dude. I think we should just do this all day, every day. What do you think?
This is one of my favorite roles. I mean, I don't know what that says about me, but I'm like, man, I really enjoy doing this.
I know, it's crazy. I don't know. It keeps growing like it's growing. We may be able to do it
Yes.
full time. However that works, we got to figure all that. It's the money thing. We haven't figured that out yet. I'm counting on you.
No, we are in trouble, right? We should mention for our listeners, we're pushing well beyond 20,000 downloads, which that blows my mind.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. But
like in podcast world, that puts us like in top 10% of all podcasts, which is crazy.
I mean, you?
Yeah, I know. It's us. There's no, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just kind of surreal in a way. And I do need to share this. I'm looking at our Riverside FM studio on my computer, and there's, pictures, just images, past episodes that we've done. And I wish we could, maybe we'll just put it out there on social media, but there's a picture of you, like your head, it is like perfectly positioned with antlers coming out each side. Did you kind of work with that when you're in that room?
If I did, I would never admit it. But I do. I was noticing during the interview, this guy's looking at me with horns coming.
It was perfect. I know. It's great.
All right, to get to something of significance here.
But that's good
substance.
stuff, actually.
It is funny, I guess, but it would be more funny if it was you than me. We were discussing off mic, especially after our most recent episode about sex being mutual inside of marriage, that it would be an excellent idea for people to listen to this with their significant other or independently and then talk about this, because there's a certain level of power in the neutrality of, hey, these people are saying these sorts of things. How do you feel about that? Here's how I feel about that. We would love for people to start using this content in that way, and some already are.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. Listening to the podcast with your significant other would probably be a great way to actually generate discussion about these hard, sensitive topics.
When you say discussion, that sounds very different than argument.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Because, man, this stuff that we talk about, it is so often, it is such a charged issue. And we said it on the last episode, we say it a lot, is like, man, the communication is the key to making all this work. And so often we don't want to talk about it because there's lots of anxiety wrapped around it, rejection, fears, all the stuff. But just to listen to kind of a neutral party talk about something, and then, hey, what'd you think about that? I mean, might be a way to generate a great discussion.
Yeah, it's much easier to say, I think Ben was wrong there, instead of, I think you're wrong there, right? Yeah. Blame it on us. We don't know you.
Yeah, we're okay.
We're safe.
Yeah, I always tell people all the time, I don't know if you when you want to go there with the hard discussions, just I always say, Roan, my crazy counselor, he told me I should talk about this. I think he's crazy. What do you think?
Isn't that wild? Yeah, that's crazy. I'd never do that. Yeah. Well, what we picked to talk about today, I'm excited to hear about this for my own personal growth, so we may have to watch that. But we were discussing what happens prior to the addiction cycle. So it would be good to give maybe a brief description for our listeners who aren't familiar with that there are basically 4 points along the line of an addiction cycle. Some people compare it to a dryer, that it just tumbles, that we start with fantasy, and then we move into ritual, then we get to acting out at the bottom, then we go over to shame, and shame is what sends us up to the top of the cycle to participate again in fantasy, ritual, acting out, and shame. Such a sinister process, and I know we've done episodes on that, and it finds its way into a lot of episodes actually, because it's such freeing information to be able to explain the fact that you are involved with this behavior repetitively doesn't necessarily mean that you're choosing it over and over and over again. The shame begins to drive in a way that pushes you up into the top of the cycle. But there's something that happens prior to the addiction cycle that is really, really powerful and universal. It doesn't just have to do with sex. There's so many other things that it impacts. So at great risk of having a multi-episode topic, I would love for us to jump into the idea of distorted thinking and what distorted thinking does to us as individuals.
Well, as CSATs and training under Dr. Patrick Carnes, when Dr. Patrick Carnes works with the addiction cycle, there's two components that he adds, and up at the top of the circle where preoccupation fantasy reside, there's arrows that come into that, and so the next movement, there's triggers, and then the initial process starts with distorted thinking, and that distorted thinking can be certainly the old toxic shame messages that we walk around with, like I'm not enough, I'm inadequate, and that gets tapped into, and then there's a trigger of some kind. But it all emanates from this distorted thinking. And oftentimes it can be just distorted thinking around sex. And somehow, like, I'm entitled to this. I deserve this. It could be connected to the resentment I have towards my wife. Like somehow, she's so mean to me. Well, I deserve this. I mean, that's a deep form of distorted thinking, right? And so this distorted thinking goes really, there's deep roots there. And if we're really going to do recovery, that's what we got to be becoming aware of and figuring out.
As you're talking about it, it sounds very similar to core beliefs, the way we talk about core beliefs. Are these things kind of co-located?
I believe they are. The core beliefs, certainly, we so often when we're talking about that, those are the I am messages. It's not I did bad, I am bad. The difference between guilt and shame. But then I think there's another layer of distorted thinking that gets into what we've been told and taught and what we believe around sex. And the distorted thinking around sex is absolutely just unbelievable.
It's a minefield.
Oh, yeah, because, we live in a pornified culture. Today's generation, learned about sex through porn. Now, just think about that for a minute, right?
Oh, I don't want to, but I know what you mean.
But it's like, oh my gosh. And then when you think about the movies, the music, the media, everything that we see, it is distorted when it comes to sex and sexuality. The Hollywood romance movies, You Complete Me and all that.
I wish people could see your face when you say that.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I want to puke. But all of those things play they all play into it, when somebody's sitting in my office and they start talking about, we've fallen out of love. I don't do it. I probably have. I don't think I've done it. But I just want to look at them and go, like, are you serious? Right? Yeah, you cannot be serious because you don't fall in and out of love. These are like good Christian people, supposedly. And it's like, man, there's no biblical ancient wisdom, whatever we want to call it, that would like talk about this idea of falling in and falling out of love. It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. So, just that in and of itself, that's a deep level of distorted thinking.
That causes a lot of damage and probably a lot of unnecessary divorces, if we're being frank, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Now, I have found, and this is just a little bit of personal history here, it's a lot easier to identify someone else's distorted thinking.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Point that
than
out.
It is your own. Yeah. I can clearly see where you're thinking distortedly here. But we all actually have it. And I think the danger that you and I discuss a lot is the distorted thinking is by necessity connected to our histories. So in that way, it feels very normal for us to feel this way. One that we've talked about on this podcast often is that the holy grail of sexuality is the mutual orgasm. If that didn't happen, like it happens in the movies, then something's wrong. Something's wrong with you, or something's wrong with me. We got to fix this. And you can just see how sinister these very false things are when they move in, because we begin to take them so personally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anything that you watch on TV is, what's promoted as somehow this is what it takes for you to be sexual. And that could be everything from the right toothpaste to the right cat food. I don't know. I mean, that's like the sex sells, man, and they're pumping it down our throats every chance they get. And we got to wake up, and we got to begin to like think and examine, like, is this good?
Yeah.
And I would say that there's about nothing good when it comes to sex and sexuality in the media out there that's just everywhere.
Yeah, something that's just heartbreaking for me that we're not being honest about, especially the culture, is the carnage and the chaos, to use our word, that ensues when that sort of distorted thinking is embraced, encouraged, and grows. I mean, it does not end well for people, but we're not following them around and saying, hey, how did that distorted thinking turn out 3 years from now?
Oh, yeah.
But I think we are, and it's a dangerous position to be in society today, to try to speak the truth in this way. But we're trying to say on this episode that distorted thinking is not just a you problem. It's not a me problem, it's a we problem, right? So as we move in and we discuss these things with the people that matter to us, maybe asking for that feedback on ways that we've got our wires crossed a little bit sexually, our thoughts around sex. And I would say even more around parenting, around money, around all the large issues that happen inside of marriages. There is absolutely distorted thinking going on inside both parties of the couple.
Oh, gosh. When it kind of keeping with the theme of the podcast, just like around sex. I mean, the human body is an amazing creation, right? And there's one of the amazing things is that there are limits that have to be in place. In Bible speak, we talk about the fruits of the Spirit, and one of those is actually self-control. God Himself practiced self-control in the creation story, because at a point He looks at it and He's like, yeah, that's enough, right? And as human beings, in some way, we have to understand that there is a limit, and it's like at some point we have to say, that's enough, right? And when you think about like just the idea, I mean, food and sex are so paralleled when it comes to this whole topic, really.
Yeah.
Because the food disorders kind of mirror the sexual disorders.
That's so
in
true,
some
isn't
way.
it? Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
we talk about anorexia. Well, we talk about sexual anorexia. We talk about bulimia. We talk about the binge and purge cycle, which is what most guys are doing. And so food and sex are correlated. And, it's interesting in Corinthians when Paul is talking about food, well, he goes right to the next topic of sex. It's really interesting that those are tied together.
Smart.
And it's like, I mean, I love Krispy Kreme donuts. I could go get a dozen.
Me too. My family doesn't.
Right. Really?
I'm telling you, they don't. Yeah, they're like, they're too sweet. I just can't handle it.
No,
Like,
that's
you're a bunch
blasphemy.
of lightweights.
Blasphemy. Yeah. But I mean, like, okay, if I go and just eat, 3 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts right now, which I could do, I'm probably not going to, I'm not going to feel very well. And then if I do that consistently without limits, without at some point saying that's enough, well, it's going to be problematic, because I'm going to probably weigh 400 pounds and I'm going to have diabetes. No doubt.
No doubt. Yeah. That will be the result.
We know this.
We know this, right?
So it's always so interesting to me how we want to take like sex, which is part of the body, and we want to make it something else. But when you look at the order, the created design, like it's all part of it. And there has to be limits. And when we violate those limits, when we operate outside of the order, well, there's chaos. I don't know, watch the news tonight. There's going to be some sexual chaos story, probably involving some politician or pastor. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or pastor. Yeah. Just recently, an organization at the top of the Christian ecosystem, one of the front runners in the new wave of attractional church.
There, yeah. I mean,
there it is.
Got
an email yesterday.
There. Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So you piqued my curiosity though, because I'm the guy that's thinking, all right, I believe you. It doesn't take me long. I believe you. How do I distorted thinking? That feels like a really complicated process.
Oh man. Great question. I think, one of the things we talk about just in our men's community, which is, probably you and I, it's kind of our lab experiment, right? I mean, it's so great because we have such a deep and rich men's community and we do life together. And there's guys that are just, man, they're willing to be honest and vulnerable and talk about anything and everything.
Tell it all, brother.
Oh my gosh. But in a way, it's kind of like, where does that happen? We're fortunate because of just that level of sharing. And so, one of the things that we talk about in our men's groups and all the stuff that we do is like, I've got to be coming up against, right thinking, healthy thinking in order to change it. And that's one of the things we see that happens in our men's community, doing life together. Like when a guy talks about, hey, if you want to masturbate, you should just, tell your wife that's what you're going to do and just go ahead and do that in the living room or something.
Gross.
Like there's going to be guys that are going to look at you and say like, dude, it's that dude. Yeah. But I mean, that's a crazy example, but I've actually heard that in a men's group. And then the beauty of what happens is the guys that come around that and like, no, man, that's twisted. But that, again, where that guy was coming from, it's like, okay, she didn't want to, so I'm going to tell her, I'm not going to hide it. Well, that's not going to be a good experience for anybody.
No, this is not going to end well.
But literally in his head, he thought that was a good thing to do. And so, I mean, that's kind of a stupid example, but it's real. I've got to be talking about this stuff in order to get feedback from others that are further down the road, that have more years of experience. They've got more wisdom. And certainly, biblical wisdom, ancient wisdom, life wisdom. I don't know what you want to call it, but there is this real thing that's called wisdom. And if you sit with people that have experienced a lot of failures and doing a lot of stupid things and like correcting those things, they're probably guys that can help you a whole lot.
You don't always have to learn from your own mistakes.
It's just...
Come on, guys.
Yeah. Like actually you could listen to somebody that's been down the road and go, okay, I'm going to do that.
I can tell you with 100% accuracy when a man is completely screwed. And that's when the only person who's been telling him the truth is his wife. Yeah. Because he's going to disregard like she's not a source of truth or wisdom.
Exactly.
But then when a guy gets in your face and says, man, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Do you actually believe that? You're like, well, yeah. And you're like, okay, well, you need to keep coming back.
Yeah. And then when you have, I always say, the circle don't lie, right? And when a guy's just like spouting this stuff, and it's so powerful when it does get spoken into, not in like the Baptist preacher kind of way. Dude, I had to do it.
I know, it's okay. I'll let it pass.
But not trying to shame a guy, but actually like in our circles, a guy actually feels and experiences care. He feels cared for, and he feels compassion. And we're actually like correcting like a good father would correct a son, right? You're doing it in a way that's loving and caring, but you're correcting. And the way that our crazy, distorted thinking gets corrected, I don't know if there's, I don't know of another way that could happen.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I know we're actually cutting right down to it in this episode, which I'm not upset about in any way. But I do think we would need to say there are a couple of alternatives that other people try. That's self-talk. Like, I'm just going to try to talk myself in or out of this. You know?
I'm going to go work on myself.
Yeah, I'm going to work on myself. I'll be back when everything's better, and then we never see him again.
Exactly.
I'm going to just read a bunch of stuff or watch a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Or the spiritual version of that is I'm just going to attend as many church things as I possibly can.
If I hear some more sermons, that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because all those other ones.
Oh gosh, we're for that. We're not saying any of those things are bad.
Yeah.
But in order to affect change, those things are minimal.
Okay, I know this is going to be hilarious because I'm going to sound like a Baptist preacher when I say this. For there to be change, right, there has to be an exchange. And there's no exchange, me sitting in front of YouTube or me sitting in front of a book or me passively, and I'm saying this to men specifically, me passively sitting in some church service. There's no exchange. I don't have to reveal there. I don't have to actually take that internal distorted thinking external and then have that get response. And that's what feedback is. I can just sit there and kind of talk myself into or out of anything completely internally. So many people try that. It never works.
Dude, when you think about the model of church, passively sitting, listening to a sermon, that fits so well for so many men because I can just sit there. And you know this, in our groups, man, there's guys that'll show up and we think their wife's making them or something, and they won't say a word. We'll let that go for a minute. But at some point, somebody's going to look at him and like, dude, you got to start talking.
Help us get to know you better.
Exactly.
Tell us your story.
And what's the greatest fear for guys in the circle? Dude, it is always, I don't want to talk. I don't want to tell my story. I don't want to do those things because his fear is he's going to say stupid things.
Probably will.
He's definitely going to. But his fear is he's going to be rejected because that's been his experience in other venues, right?
Yep.
Church, for example, because if you don't follow the conformity, if you're not conforming to the thinking, then you're probably going to get ostracized, kicked out, or put on the prayer list. And so there's got to be this avenue where a guy sees it modeled, and then he begins to like talk himself. And when you think about that, growing up, you probably didn't get the chance to talk about those types of things with dad, right? It was something shameful or something embarrassing or something you didn't know anything about, and you didn't want dad to think that you didn't know anything about it. All of these things go back to just that core part of us is like, man, I want to be accepted. I don't want to be rejected. I want to be validated. I want to be affirmed. And we just see it so often, guys sitting in a group and not talking. And then, when they start talking, we offer grace because most of the time they can't string a coherent sentence together that makes sense, but they're talking.
Yeah, we're getting reps. Yeah. That's why we say this great phrase, we're glad you're here.
Absolutely.
Because we're trying to answer all of those things. So to get to kind of the bottom of it here on this episode, what we're saying is you've got to start talking, and we always put this little comma, to safe people.
Always.
Talk to safe people.
Not at Walmart.
Not at Walmart.
Loudspeaker.
And I think we would even say, do not try this first on your spouse. This is a bad idea. You need to get reps with like gender. This is why we have male and female groups. You need to be in those environments learning how to let that internal dialogue out so that when it is responded to, because man, I've been in a lot of those scenarios, and it's interesting. You hit these plateaus in your growth, and you think you're okay, and then you realize, oh no, there's another distorted message, and I get that same feeling letting that one out. I may have talked about all sorts of embarrassing things in my story, in my life. I'm known, but when I hit a new realization and I've got to be verbal about that, I go to that same emotional place. It's just that fear that we talk about so often that you've got to push through. But what's the alternative? The alternative is being stuck in distorted thinking and hurting yourself and other people for the rest of your life. That sounds miserable.
And it is. Yeah, we know those guys. It's interesting. I'm doing the Samson Society has a recovery marathon. It's a pretty cool concept, and there's 12 speakers. I'm one of them, and my piece is on the fifth step and the idea of integrity. And even in that, when we talk about distorted thinking, the opposite of integrity, I believe, is rationalization. Right. I can rationalize myself into believing that I am not violating my integrity. That's how that works, right? Because my integrity is really internal to me, and integrity is not necessarily honesty, except for honesty with myself.
Yeah,
right.
That's terrible.
And then being honest with others, and so it is honesty, but it's not like morality.
Right.
And so I want to be honest, but I can also rationalize my way into not being transparent, not sharing. And it is certainly a form of distorted thinking. But if I'm sitting in circles, if I'm talking about this stuff consistently, and I have guys that know me, like intimately, because that's what we're doing. We're practicing intimacy. Like they're going to be able to like call it out when they see it. I mean, you've sat with guys, you've heard rationalization, and it's like, dude, that's BS, right?
That's right.
And if I'm sitting in a circle, like I want that feedback.
Totally.
I mean, I believe that the measure of a man's maturity is his ability or his inability to receive feedback from safe, trusted people.
Wise people.
Yeah. Amen.
The more that people know us, in fact, I have been in those circles and been called out for not disclosing my distorted thinking by hiding just with my nonverbals. That's how well the men that I have trusted with my life, in my life, I can tell you across the table, something's going on.
Yeah, what's up? What up?
And they will even follow it up by saying, don't call me this afternoon. I'm here right now, right?
Yeah.
So I think, unlike a lot of other things we're saying over this distorted thinking, you almost have to attack. You've got to go for it.
100%. Yeah, and it's not an accountability group. Those are mostly just sin management. Those are not helpful. It is really, we say it all the time, it is the cure for what else is. It's connection, and a connection on deep levels is where life change happens.
To learn more about what you've heard today and to engage with the Sex, God, and Chaos team, visit sexgodchaos.com.